It's the year 1021. On a windy edge of North America, where the ocean looks like it's trying to bite the land, someone is chopping wood with iron tools. Not stone, not bone. Iron. That tiny detail is a historical hand grenade, because it means Europeans reached the Americas nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. And if your brain immediately goes, wait, so the Vikings discovered America? Relax. We're not doing the lazy version of this story. We're doing the history by nature version. The one where the real main characters are winds, currents, coastlines, trees, and fragile supply lines, and where humans show up to prove they can turn even a miracle into a logistical nightmare. Today, what the Vikings actually did in America, what we can prove, what we can't, why it didn't last, and the weird, almost viral facts that make Vinland one of the most cursed what-if stories in history. The big misunderstanding. Vinland isn't a superhero origin story. Let's set the record straight from the start. This is not Vikings arrive, plant a flag, invent America, roll credits. This is Vikings arrive, build a small foothold, realize nature is expensive, meet people who already live there, and then quietly leave. Vinland is not a conquest story. It's a contact story and a geography story. Because the Vikings didn't cross the Atlantic because they were magically braver than everyone else. They crossed because the North Atlantic is not a wall. It's a brutal, unpredictable road, and the Vikings had the right vehicles for it. Greenland was the staging server. The reason Vikings could even attempt North America is that they didn't start from Europe. They started from the edges, from Iceland, from Greenland, from settlements built by people like Eric the Red. But Greenland had a problem that sounds boring until you realize it's life or death: wood. You can't maintain ships without timber. You can't build much without timber. You can't repair your world without timber. Greenland is stunning, but it is not exactly DIY home renovation unlimited lumber edition. So the West wasn't just a mystery. It was a resource rumor. Land with forests. Land with materials. Land where biology grows aggressively enough to feel like cheating. In other words, Vinland wasn't just new land. Vinland was a potential upgrade. If you remember one thing, remember this. Vinland wasn't a flex. It was a supply problem. The Vinland Trilogy, Helluland, Markland, Vinland. The sagas describe a sequence of lands to the west, almost like a three-level game map. Helluland, the rocky place Markland, the forest place Vinland, the good land with wild growth. Even the name Vinland is disputed, often associated with wine grapes, but some scholarship considers alternate readings like meadow pasture. And here's where the story gets spicy. People obsess over whether Vinland means grapes, but the deeper point is simpler. They named it after what nature offered. Not after a king, not after a god, not after an empire, after plants. That is the most history by nature thing imaginable. The hard evidence, Lance aux Meadows. Okay, time for the part we can actually put in court. In Newfoundland, there is a site called Lance aux Meadows. This is the only undisputed Norse settlement in the Americas outside Greenland. It's recognized as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, and it's interpreted for the public by Parks Canada. It contains the remains of turf and timber buildings built in the Norse style seen in Greenland and Iceland. And here's the viral fact that turns this from around the year 1000 into, oh wow, that's specific. A nature study used a known radiocarbon spike tied to a solar event around AD 993, then counted tree rings to date woodcutting at the site to AD 1021. So yes, there's a universe where cosmic physics helped fact-check Viking sagas. History is weird. What did they do there? Outpost, not empire. Now the question everyone asks, If Vikings reached America, what did they actually do? Not build New York, not become the Marvel Cinematic Universe of colonization. Everything we have suggests this was small-scale and practical. More like a base camp, a repair and staging spot, a place to gather materials, a launching point for exploration. Think of it like this. Lance O. Meadows isn't a city, it's a tool. A piece of infrastructure in a bigger network. A node on the edge of the known Norse world. Vikings didn't settle America the way later Europeans did. They tested it. The weirdest clue, butternuts, the snack that solves a mystery. Now here's one of the best weird facts in the entire Vinland story. At Lance O. Meadows, archaeologists found evidence including butternuts, a tree nut that doesn't naturally grow in Newfoundland, and points to travel farther south where butternut trees do grow. So even if the confirmed settlement is in Newfoundland, it suggests Norse crews likely explored beyond it. This matters because it reframes Vinland. Vinland might not be one exact dot on a map. It might be a region of resource trips, a zone of go there, gather, return, not conquest, not permanence, a supply mission. And yes, it is objectively hilarious that one of our best "they went farther" clues is essentially, Your Honor, the Vikings left behind snacks, the nature engine, why the North Atlantic was crossable. Now let's talk about the real superpowers here. Winds, currents, coastlines, ships. The North Atlantic is deadly, but it's not random. There are patterns, sea routes, island chains, and seasonal windows that can turn an impossible ocean into a harsh but navigable corridor. The Norse had ship technology adapted for this world. Vessels capable of open water but also shallow coastal movement and beach landings, which is exactly what you want when you're exploring unknown coastlines. You don't want deep draft ships that require perfect harbors. You want, we can land anywhere-ish. So Vinland is a story where geography did two things at once. Opened the door, made sure the door was covered in knives. The part Hollywood skips. They were not alone. Now the most important line in this story, North America wasn't empty. Indigenous peoples already lived in these regions, with deep knowledge of the land, resources, and survival strategies. The sagas describe encounters with skraelings, a Norse term used for the people they met. And whatever the exact details of contact, the big reality is unavoidable. If you are a small group across an ocean, you do not get to own a place. You get to negotiate with it, and with the people already there. Even if you're tough, you're outnumbered. Even if you're armed, you're exposed. Even if you're brave, bravery doesn't fix your supply chain. Vinland wasn't doomed by weak Vikings. It was doomed by the fact that it was an outpost. And outposts are what happen when ambition outruns logistics. Retention beat. If Vinland feels like a thriller, it's because it is. A survival story with political tension. Why didn't it last? The Four Horsemen of Nope. So why didn't Vikings stay? Here are the four biggest pressures, each one bad, altogether fatal. 1. Distance. The Atlantic isn't a commute. It's a season risk gamble. 2. Supply lines. No matter how skilled you are, if you can't reliably resupply people, tools, food, and replacements, your outpost becomes a countdown. 3. Conflict risk. Cross-cultural encounters can include trade, tension, misunderstandings, and conflict, especially when neither side shares language or intentions. 4. Return on investment. If Greenland needs wood, you don't necessarily need a permanent colony. You might just need a few successful trips. Vinland might have been worth it, but not worth it forever. But wait, I heard there were other sites. The point. Rosy moment. Every few years, the internet wants more Viking America. Secret settlements, hidden cities, Vikings everywhere. And sometimes investigators do look. For example, Point Rosy in Newfoundland was explored as a possible Norse site, and later reporting concluded there was no evidence of Norse presence there. This is why Vinland stays fascinating, because the proven footprint is real. but small. And that forces us to confront a truth we hate. History isn't always epic. Sometimes it's a brief, risky experiment that leaves just enough evidence to haunt us. So what did the Vikings actually do in America? The clean answer. If we compress the best-supported picture, Vikings reached North America by at least 1021. They established a small Norse-style site at Liance Oak Meadows in Newfoundland. They likely used it as a base for exploration and resource gathering, and evidence like butternuts suggests travel beyond Newfoundland. They interacted with indigenous peoples, and saga narratives and later discussion emphasized challenges including violence, limited supplies, and lack of wider support. And they left without forming a lasting colony. Which means before Columbus, the Vikings didn't create European America. They proved something else, that the Atlantic could be crossed, and that nature sets the terms of what success even means. 3 things people get wrong. Now, let's weaponize this into retention. Myth 1. Vikings discovered America first. They reached parts of North America before Columbus, yes. But discover ignores indigenous peoples who are already there. The real story is contact, not discovery. Myth 2. Vinland was a big colony. The only confirmed site looks more like a small outpost than a permanent settlement. Myth 3. The sagas are either totally true or totally fake. Archaeology confirms the broad reality that Norse reached North America, while details remain debated and not everything in saga narrative can be treated as a literal logbook. If you want the real moral of Vinland, it's this: geography opened the door. Biology made it tempting. Logistics slammed it shut. The Vikings weren't beaten by a single enemy. They were beaten by distance storms, resupply risk, and the fact that humans cannot permanently occupy a place without building stable relationships and stable systems. And that is why Vinland matters. Not because it's a gotcha against Columbus, but because it shows how history actually works, not as a straight line of great men, but as a negotiation between people and nature. And nature is always holding the pen. So, before Columbus, what did the Vikings actually do in America? They arrived. They built a foothold. They explored. They strained their supply lines. They faced the reality of contact. And they left. The myth wants it to be bigger. But the truth is better because it's human-sized, nature-driven, and brutally real. If you want more episodes like this, where geography, biology, and people build history, hit subscribe to History by Nature. What do you think ended Vinland first? Storms, supply lines, conflict, or pure economics? And if you want part 2, say, map it in the comments, because next we can go full detective mode. Where was Vinland really? Helluland, Markland, the grape debate, the butternut clue, and the geography that connects it all. Because the past was curious, and it was definitely cursed.